The rain hammered against the windows of Mitchell General Hospital with relentless fury, creating rivers that streamed down the glass like tears. Jennifer Hayes sat alone in the emergency room waiting area, her hands trembling as she clutched her phone. At 28 years old, she had faced many challenges in her life, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Her younger brother, Tommy, lay somewhere beyond those double doors, his condition critical after a devastating car accident on the slick highway just 2 hours earlier. Jennifer's fingers hovered over her phone screen, her vision blurred by exhaustion and fear. She needed to call their Aunt Margaret, the only family they had left since their parents passed away 3 years ago. Margaret lived in Boston, nearly 4 hours away, but she deserved to know. Jennifer's hands shook so badly that when she finally pressed the call button, she didn't notice she had misdialed the last digit. The phone rang 3 times before a deep, unfamiliar male voice answered. "Hello?" Jennifer's words tumbled out in a desperate rush. "Aunt Margaret, it's Tommy. There's been an accident. He's in surgery now, and they said it doesn't look good. Please, I need you here. I can't lose him too. I can't be alone." There was a pause on the other end, followed by a gentle clearing of throat. "I'm not Margaret, but please don't hang up. Tell me where you are." Jennifer's heart sank as she realized her mistake, but something in the stranger's voice, calm, commanding yet compassionate, made her continue. "Mitchell General. I'm sorry, I dialed wrong. I should stay right there," the voice interrupted firmly. "What's your name?" "Jennifer. Jennifer Hayes." "Jennifer, my name is Daniel Montgomery. I want you to take a deep breath. Can you do that for me?" His tone carried an authority that somehow made her feel less alone. "Now tell me about Tommy." Perhaps it was the shock or the desperate need to talk to anyone who would listen, but Jennifer found herself pouring out the story to this complete stranger. She told him about Tommy, a bright 23-year-old mechanical engineering student at the State University, about how he'd been driving home from his night class when a truck ran a red light. She spoke about their parents' death in a house fire, how she'd raised Tommy while working 2 jobs to put him through school, how he was all she had left in this world. Daniel listened without interruption, and when she finished, his voice was thick with emotion. "You're not alone, Jennifer. I'm going to make some calls, just hold on." Before she could respond, the line went dead. Jennifer stared at her phone, wondering if she'd imagined the entire conversation. The exhaustion must be playing tricks on her mind. She finally dialed the correct number for her aunt, who promised to leave immediately despite the late hour and terrible weather. 20 minutes later, a nurse approached Jennifer with a kind but tired smile. "Miss Hayes, your brother is out of surgery. Dr. Patterson wants to speak with you." Jennifer's legs felt like water as she stood. The nurse led her through a maze of corridors to a small consultation room where a silver-haired surgeon waited, still in his scrubs. His face was grave. "Miss Hayes, please sit down," Dr. Patterson began, his tone professional but not unkind. "Tommy made it through surgery, but I won't sugarcoat this. He has severe internal injuries, a fractured spine, and significant trauma to his chest cavity. The next 48 hours are critical. We've done everything we can, but he needs specialized care that, frankly, our facility isn't equipped to provide." Jennifer's world tilted. "What are you saying?" "There's a surgical team in Philadelphia, one of the best trauma units in the country. They have technology and expertise that could make the difference, but the transfer alone would cost upwards of $200,000, not including the specialized treatment he'd need. Without insurance that covers this level of care," Dr. Patterson's voice trailed off, the implication clear. Jennifer's mind reeled. She had $15,000 in savings, money she'd been carefully setting aside for Tommy's final year of tuition. It wasn't even close to enough. "I'll figure something out," she whispered, though she had no idea how. "Can I see him?" The doctor nodded and led her to the intensive care unit. Tommy lay motionless, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed, tubes and wires connecting him to life itself. His face, usually so animated and full of laughter, was pale and still. Jennifer pulled a chair close to his bed and took his hand, careful not to disturb the IV line. "I'm here, Tommy," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere. We're going to get through this, just like we've gotten through everything else." But even as she spoke the words, doubt gnawed at her heart. She must have dozed off in the chair because she woke to the sound of commotion in the hallway. Raised voices, the squeak of shoes on linoleum, and then the door to Tommy's room opened. A nurse poked her head in, her expression bewildered. "Miss Hayes, there are some people here to see you. They say it's urgent." Jennifer stood, confused. Her aunt couldn't have arrived yet, not in this weather. She stepped into the hallway and froze. 3 people in expensive suits stood waiting, and behind them, looking somehow both out of place and completely in command, was a tall man with dark hair graying at the temples, wearing a cashmere coat over what appeared to be pajamas. The man stepped forward, and Jennifer recognized the voice immediately. It was the same voice from the phone. "Jennifer Hayes, I'm Daniel Montgomery. We spoke earlier tonight. I've brought some people who can help." Jennifer stared at him, unable to process what was happening. One of the suited individuals stepped forward, a woman with sharp features and kind eyes. "Miss Hayes, I'm Dr. Rachel Freeman from Philadelphia General's Advanced Trauma Unit. Mr. Montgomery contacted us about your brother's case. We've reviewed his scans remotely, and we have a helicopter standing by to transport him to our facility. Our team is already preparing for his arrival." "I don't understand," Jennifer breathed. "I can't afford—" Daniel raised his hand gently. "That's already handled. Your brother deserves the best chance at recovery, and time is critical. Dr. Freeman and her team are the best in the country at cases like this." Jennifer's knees buckled, and Daniel moved quickly to steady her, guiding her to a nearby chair. "Why?" she managed to ask, tears streaming down her face. "You don't even know us." "Why would you do this?" Daniel crouched down to meet her eyes, and she saw a deep sadness there mixed with determination. "Because 15 years ago, I got a call in the middle of the night about my younger sister. She'd been in an accident, and I was 3,000 miles away on a business trip. By the time I got home, she was gone. I swore that if I ever had the chance to help someone in a similar situation, I would." "You dialed the wrong number, Jennifer, but maybe it was exactly the right one." What Jennifer didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know in that moment, was that Daniel Montgomery wasn't just a kind stranger. He was the CEO of Montgomery Industries, one of the largest medical equipment manufacturers in the country, and his personal foundation had been quietly funding trauma research and patient care for over a decade. But more than that, he was a man still carrying the weight of a loss he couldn't prevent, looking for redemption in helping others. As the medical team prepared Tommy for transport, Jennifer watched in stunned disbelief. Her Aunt Margaret arrived just as the helicopter was landing on the hospital's roof, and Jennifer found herself swept into a whirlwind of activity. But through it all, Daniel Montgomery remained steady presence, ensuring every detail was handled, every question answered. Just before dawn, as Jennifer prepared to follow the helicopter in a car Daniel had arranged, Dr. Patterson pulled her aside one final time. His expression was troubled. "Miss Hayes, there's something you should know. When we were preparing the transfer paperwork, we discovered something unusual in your brother's initial blood work, something that changes everything about this case." Jennifer's breath caught in her throat as Dr. Patterson's words hung in the air. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor seemed to brighten, making her squint against their harsh glare. "What do you mean? What did you find?" Dr. Patterson glanced at Daniel Montgomery, who stood a few feet away coordinating with his team, then back to Jennifer. "Your brother has an extremely rare blood type, what we call renal, sometimes called golden blood. There are fewer than 50 people in the world known to have it. The issue is that if he needs a transfusion during the advanced procedures in Philadelphia, finding compatible blood will be nearly impossible." Jennifer felt the ground shift beneath her feet again, just when she thought things couldn't get more complicated. "But I'm his sister, can't I donate? We'll test you immediately, of course, but renal is so rare that even siblings don't always match. The odds are—" Dr. Patterson hesitated. "The odds aren't in our favor." Daniel had moved closer during the conversation, and now he spoke up. "What are the options if she's not a match? There's a global registry of Rh null donors, but they're scattered across continents. Getting the blood here in time for emergency surgery could be challenging, especially with this weather grounding most flights." Dr. Patterson rubbed his tired eyes. "I've already put in a call to the registry, but I wanted Miss Hayes to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with." Jennifer's mind raced back through years of memories. Tommy's childhood scraped knees that seemed to bleed more than normal, the time he'd needed stitches after a bicycle accident, and the doctors had seemed unusually concerned. Their mother had always been careful about medical records, keeping everything in a locked file box that Jennifer still had stored in her apartment. Had she known about Tommy's rare blood type? "Test me now," Jennifer said firmly. "We can't waste any time." Within minutes, a nurse had drawn Jennifer's blood and rushed it to the lab with orders to expedite the results. Jennifer sat in the waiting area with her Aunt Margaret, who had finally caught her breath after her frantic drive through the storm. The older woman held Jennifer's hand tightly, her weathered face creased with worry. "Your mother never mentioned anything about Tommy's blood," Margaret murmured. But then again, Diane was always private about medical matters. "After your father died, she became even more protective of you children." Daniel had excused himself to make calls, but Jennifer could see him through the glass windows of a nearby office, speaking urgently on his phone. She still couldn't fully comprehend why this stranger was helping them, but his sister's story echoed in her mind. Grief had a way of connecting people across impossible distances. An hour passed with agonizing slowness. The helicopter waited on the roof, its crew ready to transport Tommy the moment they received clearance. Dr. Freeman had returned to the ICU to monitor Tommy's vitals, which were holding steady, but showed no signs of improvement. Every minute that ticked by was a minute Tommy didn't have. Finally, Dr. Patterson emerged from the lab area, and Jennifer jumped to her feet. His expression was unreadable as he approached. "You're not a match," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, Jennifer." The words hit her like a physical blow. Margaret gasped beside her, and Jennifer felt her aunt's arm wrap around her shoulders. "Then what do we do?" Jennifer asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The registry has identified 3 potential donors, one in Switzerland, one in Japan, and one in Australia. The Swiss donor is willing and available, but getting the blood here—" Dr. Patterson shook his head. "Even with Mr. Montgomery's resources, we're looking at 12 to 14 hours minimum. And that's if everything goes perfectly. Tommy needs to be in Philadelphia now, but starting those advanced procedures without blood on standby would be too risky." Daniel had rejoined them, his phone still in his hand. "I have a private jet fueled and ready at the airport. The Swiss donor has agreed to fly here personally. They're a physician themselves and understand the urgency. But Dr. Patterson is right about the timeline. We're in a race against the clock." Jennifer looked at Tommy through the window of his room. Her baby brother, who had survived their parents' death, who had maintained a 4.0 GPA while working part-time at the campus library, who wanted to design prosthetics to help children with disabilities. He couldn't die because of something as arbitrary as blood type. "Send him to Philadelphia," Jennifer said suddenly, her voice stronger than she felt. "Start preparing him for whatever procedures he needs. The blood will get there when it gets there, but we can't wait. Tommy wouldn't want us to wait." Dr. Freeman, who had joined them, looked thoughtful. "We can begin certain preparatory procedures, stabilize him further and buy some time. If the blood arrives within the window we need, we proceed. If not—" She didn't finish the sentence. "Then that's what we do," Jennifer said firmly. The next hour was a blur of activity. Tommy was carefully transferred to a specialized transport gurney, every tube and wire meticulously checked and rechecked. Jennifer rode in the car with her aunt and Daniel, following the helicopter as it lifted into the pre-dawn sky. The storm had finally broken, leaving the world washed clean and glistening under emerging stars. During the drive, Daniel told them more about his sister, Amanda. She had been a promising violinist, just 20 years old, full of dreams and possibilities. A drunk driver had run her off the road on a rainy night much like this one. By the time Daniel had made it home from Tokyo, where he'd been closing a business deal, she was gone. "I threw myself into work after that," Daniel admitted, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Built my company into something massive, made more money than I could ever spend, but none of it meant anything. Then, about 10 years ago, I started the foundation, Amanda's Foundation for Trauma Care. We fund research, provide equipment to hospitals, cover costs for families who can't afford treatment. It gave me purpose again." Jennifer listened, understanding now the depth of what this stranger was doing for them. "Your sister would be proud," she said softly. Daniel's jaw tightened with emotion. "I hope so. I hope this helps balance the scales somehow." They arrived at Philadelphia General just as the sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The hospital was a massive complex of modern buildings, nothing like the modest facility they'd left behind. A team was waiting for them at the entrance, and Tommy was whisked away immediately to the advanced trauma unit. Dr. Freeman led Jennifer, Margaret, and Daniel to a private waiting room that was clearly reserved for special cases. "We're beginning the stabilization procedures now," she explained. "Your brother is a fighter, Miss Hayes. His vitals have actually improved slightly during the transport, which is a good sign. But I won't lie to you, the next few hours are critical, and we need that blood." Jennifer nodded, feeling Margaret's presence beside her like an anchor. "Do whatever you need to do, Doctor. Please." As Dr. Freeman left, Jennifer finally allowed herself to sink into one of the comfortable chairs. She hadn't slept in over 24 hours, and exhaustion was pulling at her like a tide. Daniel had disappeared somewhere, presumably to make more calls and coordinate the blood delivery. Margaret made coffee in the small kitchenette attached to the waiting room and brought Jennifer a cup. "Drink this, sweetheart. You need to keep your strength up for Tommy." Jennifer accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping her cold hands around the warm mug. "Aunt Margaret, do you think Mom knew about Tommy's blood type?" Her aunt settled into the chair beside her with a thoughtful expression. "I've been wondering the same thing. Your mother was meticulous about health records. If she knew, she would have documented it somewhere." "The file box," Jennifer said suddenly, sitting up straighter. "Mom's medical file box. I have it at my apartment. I never went through it all. It seemed too painful after she died, but maybe there's information there that could help," Margaret finished. "I could drive back and get it. It's only 4 hours." Before Jennifer could respond, Daniel returned to the waiting room. His expression was tense, and he held his phone like it was a lifeline. "The Swiss donor's flight has been delayed. Mechanical issue. They're working on it, but we've lost 2 hours from our timeline." Jennifer's heart plummeted. 2 hours might as well be an eternity. She looked at Daniel, this man who had done so much already, and saw the same helplessness reflected in his eyes that she felt in her soul. Then Dr. Freeman burst into the waiting room, her face flushed with urgency. "Mr. Montgomery, we need you in the lab immediately. There's been a development, something in the routine screening we run on all our donors and staff. You need to come now." Daniel exchanged a confused glance with Jennifer before following Dr. Freeman out of the waiting room at a rapid pace. Jennifer's instincts screamed at her to follow, and she jumped to her feet, Margaret close behind. They caught up to Daniel and Dr. Freeman just outside the laboratory entrance. "What's going on?" Daniel demanded, his usual composure cracking slightly. "Why do you need me in the lab?" Dr. Freeman turned to face them, her expression a mixture of disbelief and excitement. "Mr. Montgomery, as part of our standard protocol, we run blood typing on anyone who enters our surgical wing, staff, donors, even visitors in certain circumstances. When you came through earlier coordinating the case, you were automatically screened." She paused, as if struggling to believe her own words. "You're null. You have the same golden blood type as Tommy Hayes." The hallway fell into stunned silence. Jennifer felt the world tilt on its axis for what felt like the 100th time that night. Daniel stood frozen, his face pale. "That's impossible," he whispered. "I've donated blood dozens of times. Someone would have noticed." "Not necessarily," Dr. Freeman explained quickly. "Fictional can sometimes be missed in standard typing, especially if the testing isn't comprehensive. It's so rare that many facilities don't even screen for it specifically. But our equipment here is state-of-the-art. We've caught it. Mr. Montgomery, you could save this young man's life directly. We can begin the procedures immediately if you're willing to donate." Daniel's hand went to his chest, and Jennifer saw something shift in his expression, shock giving way to something that looked almost like wonder. "Of course. Yes, whatever he needs." "Wait," Jennifer interrupted, her mind racing. "This can't be a coincidence. The wrong number, the same blood type. What are the odds?" Dr. Freeman shook her head. "Astronomical. There are only about 43 known Rh-null individuals in the world. The chances of 2 of them randomly connecting through a misdialed phone number are—" She trailed off. "Well, it's beyond calculation." Margaret gripped Jennifer's arm, her voice trembling. "Unless it's not random at all." Everyone turned to look at the older woman. Margaret's face had gone white and her eyes were fixed on Daniel with an intensity that made Jennifer's skin prickle. "What do you mean, Aunt Margaret?" Jennifer asked carefully. Margaret seemed to struggle with herself for a moment before speaking. "Daniel Montgomery. Your sister's name was Amanda Montgomery. She would have been—" What, 35 now if she'd lived? 36 next month, Daniel said, his brow furrowing. How did you know? Because 29 years ago my sister Diane had a baby girl. She was only 19, unmarried and terrified. Our parents were strict, unforgiving. Diane was told she had two choices: keep the baby and be disowned or give her up for adoption. Margaret's voice broke. She chose adoption, but it destroyed something in her. She never forgave herself. Jennifer felt like she was falling. Mom had another child? Before me and Tommy? Margaret nodded, tears streaming down her face. A daughter. She was adopted by a wealthy couple from Boston. Diane only knew their last name, Montgomery. She received one letter from them when the girl was 5, with a photo. The adoptive parents wanted Diane to know her daughter was happy, loved, and thriving. The girl's name was Amanda. Daniel staggered backward, catching himself against the wall. No, that's not possible. My parents never told me I had a biological sister. Amanda was their daughter, our father's second marriage. Or that's what they told you, Margaret said gently. Did Amanda look like your father? Daniel's face had gone ashen. She looked like our mother. That's what everyone always said. She had our mother's features, her musical talent, her... He stopped, his eyes widening. Her rare blood type. Our mother used to say it was a medical mystery where Amanda got it. Neither she nor our father had it. Because Amanda inherited it from her biological mother, Margaret finished, from Diane, and Diane's son, Tommy, inherited it too. The pieces clicked into place in Jennifer's mind with devastating clarity. Tommy and Amanda were half-siblings, and Daniel, you're Amanda's adoptive brother, which means when your brother needed help, you called the one person in the world who could give him what he needed, Dr. Freeman said softly. His sister's adoptive brother, someone with the same rare blood and the resources to help. Daniel looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He turned to Jennifer, his eyes searching her face. Your mother, Diane, is she... She died 3 years ago, Jennifer said quietly. House fire. She and our dad both. The grief that crossed Daniel's face was profound. She never knew. Amanda died 15 years ago, and Diane never knew what happened to the daughter she gave up. Margaret was openly weeping now. Diane looked for Amanda, you know, after she got married, after she had Jennifer and Tommy, and felt more stable. She hired a private investigator, but the adoption had been sealed tight. She never found her. It haunted her until the day she died. Daniel seemed to pull himself together with visible effort, his business acumen reasserting itself even as emotions roiled beneath the surface. We need to focus on Tommy right now. Dr. Freeman, how much blood do you need and how quickly can we do this? Dr. Freeman nodded, professional once more. We need to run a final compatibility cross-match to be absolutely certain, but assuming it confirms what we believe, we can begin donation within the hour. The procedures for Tommy can start as soon as we have the blood secured. As they moved toward the laboratory, Jennifer caught Daniel's arm. Why didn't your parents tell you Amanda was adopted? Daniel's jaw worked as he considered the question. My father was a proud man. Appearance was everything to him. Having an adopted daughter might have seemed like admitting some kind of failure to conceive, or maybe they were protecting her, protecting Amanda from feeling different or less than. He paused. I found letters once when I was clearing out my mother's things after she passed. Letters from someone named Diane returned unopened. I didn't understand them at the time, but now you know they were from our mother, Jennifer said, trying to reach her daughter, trying to reach Amanda. Daniel confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. All these years I thought I'd failed my sister by not being there when she needed me. But maybe there's a reason I couldn't save her. Maybe I was meant to save her brother instead. The cross-match testing took 45 minutes that felt like 45 years. Jennifer sat with Margaret in the waiting room, both of them still reeling from the revelations. The story of their mother's secret past, of Amanda Montgomery, of the impossible chain of events that had led to this moment. It was almost too much to process. Do you think Mum knew somehow? Jennifer asked quietly. When she named Tommy, when she kept such careful medical records, do you think some part of her knew he might need this connection someday? Margaret considered the question. Your mother believed in things beyond explanation. Fate, destiny, the idea that people who are meant to find each other will, no matter the obstacles. She smiled sadly. She used to say that Amanda was out there somewhere, living a beautiful life, and that someday the universe would bring their paths together again. Maybe it did, just not in the way anyone expected. Dr. Freeman returned with a smile that lit up her entire face. Perfect match. We're beginning the donation process now, and Mr. Montgomery has insisted on staying conscious throughout so he can monitor the situation. He's quite determined. That sounds like Daniel, Jennifer said, though she barely knew him. Yet somehow she felt like she'd known him forever, because in a way, through the sister he'd loved and lost, she had. 3 hours later, with Daniel's blood secured and Tommy stabilized, the surgical team began the delicate procedures that would save Tommy's life. Daniel sat in the waiting room with Jennifer and Margaret, a bandage on his arm and a blanket around his shoulders. He looked exhausted, but more at peace than he had since Jennifer first saw him. "I need to tell you something," Daniel said suddenly. "About Amanda. About who she really was." Jennifer nodded, sensing this was important. Amanda was brilliant, kind and fiercely independent. She played violin like an angel, but she also volunteered at children's hospitals, teaching music to sick kids. She believed music could heal. Daniel's voice grew stronger. The night she died, she was coming home from one of those sessions. A little girl with leukemia had just learned her favorite song, and Amanda was so happy. She called me from the car, laughing, making me promise to attend the girl's recital the next week. "She sounds wonderful," Jennifer whispered. She was. And I think she would have loved knowing she had a brother, that somewhere out there Tommy existed. Daniel looked directly at Jennifer. "I failed Amanda, but I won't fail Tommy. Whatever he needs, education, medical care, anything, I'll be there. Not because I'm trying to replace what I lost, but because he's family. Because in some strange, impossible way, we were always meant to find each other." Margaret reached over and squeezed Daniel's hand. Diane would be grateful, both for Tommy and for knowing finally what happened to her daughter. A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Dr. Freeman wants you to know that the first procedure went perfectly. Mr. Hayes is responding even better than expected. She's optimistic about his full recovery." The relief that washed over Jennifer was so powerful, she thought she might faint. Tommy was going to live. Her brother, her last piece of family, was going to survive. But as she looked at Daniel and her Aunt Margaret, Jennifer realized that wasn't quite true anymore. Her family had just gotten bigger in the most unexpected way possible. 6 weeks later, Jennifer stood in the doorway of Tommy's hospital room and marveled at the transformation. Her brother sat propped up in bed, his laptop balanced on a specially designed table, working on a class assignment his professors had agreed to let him complete remotely. The pallor had left his face, replaced by healthy color, and though he still had weeks of physical therapy ahead, the doctors were calling his recovery nothing short of miraculous. "You're staring again," Tommy said without looking up from his screen, a grin playing at his lips. "It's creepy, Jen." Jennifer laughed and entered the room, settling into the chair that had become her second home. "I'm allowed to stare. I almost lost you." Tommy finally looked up, his expression softening. "But you didn't. Thanks to a wrong number and the most insane coincidence in human history." He shook his head in wonder. "I still can't believe it all, that I have a half-sister I never knew about, that she was adopted by the Montgomery family, that her brother happened to answer your call." "Daniel doesn't think it was coincidence," Jennifer said quietly. "He thinks Amanda had something to do with it, that somehow she made sure you'd be okay." Tommy was quiet for a moment. "What do you think?" Jennifer considered the question carefully. In the weeks since that terrifying night, she'd had plenty of time to reflect on the impossibility of it all. The odds of misdialing and reaching someone with the same rare blood type, someone with the resources and motivation to help, someone who turned out to be connected to them through a sister neither of them had known existed. It defied rational explanation. "I think," she said slowly, "that sometimes things happen that we can't explain, and maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need to understand everything to accept that we were incredibly lucky." The door opened, and Daniel entered carrying a bag from Tommy's favorite burger place. Over the past weeks, he had become a constant presence, visiting almost daily, bringing food, books, and stories about Amanda that helped fill in the pieces of a sister Tommy had never known he had. "Contraband delivery," Daniel announced with a smile. "Don't tell Dr. Freeman I'm undermining her nutritional guidelines." Tommy's eyes lit up. "You're my hero. If I have to eat one more serving of hospital jello, I'm going to lose my mind. As Tommy dove into his burger, Daniel pulled Jennifer aside. Can we talk for a minute? There's something I want to discuss with you. They stepped into the hallway, and Jennifer was struck again by how much Daniel had changed since that first night. The grief that had shadowed his eyes had softened into something else. Not happiness exactly, but purpose, peace. I've been thinking about the future, Daniel began. About what happens when Tommy's released from here. About his education, his career plans. Jennifer tensed slightly. Daniel had already paid for all of Tommy's medical care, a debt she could never repay. She hoped he wasn't about to offer more charity. Her pride could only take so much. Daniel seemed to sense her discomfort and smiled. Relax. This is actually a selfish proposal. Montgomery Industries has a research and development division that works on medical prosthetics and assistive devices. I know Tommy's interested in that field. He told me about his senior project designing a more affordable prosthetic hand for children. He's passionate about it, Jennifer confirmed. He wants to make devices that kids can actually afford, not just the wealthy. Exactly. And that aligns perfectly with Amanda's Foundation's mission. Daniel pulled out his phone and showed Jennifer a series of architectural renderings. We're breaking ground on a new research facility in 3 months. It's going to be called the Amanda Montgomery Center for Accessible Medical Technology. The goal is to develop cutting-edge prosthetics and assistive devices that can be manufactured at a fraction of current costs. Jennifer studied the images, impressed by the scope of the project. It's beautiful. Amanda would have loved this. I hope so, but here's the thing. I want Tommy to be part of it. Not as charity, but because he's brilliant, and his ideas are exactly what we need. Daniel met her eyes. I'm offering him an internship this summer, and if he's interested, a full-time position after graduation. We'll work around his physical therapy schedule, provide whatever accommodations he needs. I've already spoken to the dean at his university about integrating this with his final year curriculum. Jennifer felt tears prick her eyes. Daniel, you've already done so much. I'm not doing this for gratitude, Jennifer. I'm doing it because it's the right thing, because Tommy deserves the opportunity, and because... He paused, his voice growing thick with emotion. Because I couldn't save Amanda, but I can help her brother achieve his dreams. That means something to me. It means everything. Jennifer pulled Daniel into a hug, no longer caring about maintaining professional distance with this man who had become so much more than a stranger. Thank you, she whispered, for all of it. When they returned to Tommy's room, Margaret was there, having arrived with fresh flowers and a tin of homemade cookies. The older woman had bloomed in recent weeks. The burden of decades-old secrets finally lifted. She'd brought photo albums from Jennifer's mother's belongings, images of Diane as a young woman, holding a baby girl with dark hair and bright eyes, Amanda, their sister. I have news, Margaret announced, her eyes twinkling. I've been in contact with the parents of that little girl Amanda was tutoring, the one with leukemia. Her name is Sophie, and she's in remission now. When I told her mother about the connection between Amanda and Tommy, about everything that happened, she asked if she could visit. Tommy looked up from his burger, curious. Really? Why? Because Sophie wants to play for you. She's been practicing the song Amanda taught her, Pachelbel's Canon in D. She wants to honor Amanda's memory by sharing her music with Amanda's brother. Jennifer watched Tommy's face transform, emotions flickering across it, wonder, sadness, joy. I'd like that, he said softly. I'd really like that. 3 days later, they gathered in a small courtyard garden attached to the hospital. Tommy was in a wheelchair, still not strong enough for extended walking, but the fresh air and sunshine did him good. Sophie arrived with her parents, a tiny 9-year-old with big eyes and a violin case almost as large as she was. She played beautifully, the notes floating through the garden like a prayer. Jennifer stood beside Daniel, and she felt him reach for her hand. She took it without hesitation, understanding that this moment was about more than just music. It was about connection, about the threads that bound them all together across time and loss. When Sophie finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. The little girl walked over to Tommy and carefully placed the sheet music in his lap. Miss Amanda wrote notes on this, Sophie said shyly. See, she wrote, remember, music is love made audible. I want you to have it because she was your sister and she would want you to have something of hers. Tommy's hands trembled as he held the worn paper, seeing Amanda's handwriting for the first time. Thank you, Sophie. This means more than you know. As Sophie and her parents left, Jennifer noticed Daniel had walked to the far edge of the garden, his shoulders shaking. She approached quietly and found him crying, silent tears streaming down his face. She's still here, he said when Jennifer touched his arm. Amanda, in Sophie's music, in Tommy's determination, in the impossible chain of events that saved his life. She's still here, still making a difference. She is, Jennifer agreed, and she always will be. The months that followed brought continued healing, both physical and emotional. Tommy's recovery progressed steadily, and by fall he was back at university, splitting his time between classes and his internship at the Amanda Montgomery Center. His designs for affordable prosthetics were already generating interest from medical journals and humanitarian organizations. Jennifer had made changes in her own life too. With Tommy's medical bills covered and his future secure, she'd finally allowed herself to pursue her own dreams. She'd enrolled in nursing school, inspired by the doctors and nurses who had saved her brother's life. Daniel had offered to help with tuition, but Jennifer had declined. Some things she needed to do on her own, but she'd accepted his invitation to join the board of Amanda's foundation, using her unique perspective as someone who had benefited from their work to help guide future programs. It felt right, honoring both Amanda and her own mother's memory by helping others in crisis. On the first anniversary of the accident, they held a small ceremony at the foundation's headquarters. A portrait of Amanda Montgomery was unveiled in the main lobby, her violin tucked under her chin, her eyes bright with joy. Beneath it, a plaque read, Amanda Montgomery, sister, musician, healer. Her music continues in the lives she touches. Tommy stood before the portrait in his suit, stronger now, though he still walked with a slight limp the doctor said would fade with time. I wish I could have known her, he said quietly. Daniel stood beside him, and Jennifer saw the resemblance, not in features, but in stance, in the way they both carried themselves with quiet determination. You do know her, Daniel said. Every time you design something that will help a child walk or grasp or live more fully, that's Amanda. That's her legacy, continuing through you. Later that evening, Jennifer found herself alone with Daniel in his office, looking out over the city lights. Their relationship had evolved over the months into something she couldn't quite define. Not romantic, not exactly familial, but deep and important nonetheless. I've been thinking about wrong numbers, Daniel said suddenly, a slight smile on his face. How one misdialed digit changed everything. For both of us. Jennifer smiled. It wasn't the wrong number, though, was it? It was exactly the right one. We just didn't know it at the time. No, Daniel agreed. We didn't. But someone did. Somewhere, somehow, Amanda knew her brother needed help, and she made sure the call got through. Jennifer leaned against the window, thinking about her mother, about the daughter she'd given up and never stopped loving, about Amanda, who had lived a life of music and service, about Tommy, who had been given a second chance, about Daniel, who had finally found a way to transform his grief into something beautiful. Do you believe in miracles? She asked. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I believe in love. I believe it transcends death and distance and all the logical boundaries we put on the world. I believe Amanda loved her brother, both her brothers, even though she never knew Tommy existed. And I believe that love found a way. Jennifer's phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Physical therapy kicked my butt today, but I finally walked a full mile. Amanda would be proud, right? She showed the message to Daniel, who laughed through sudden tears. She would be beyond proud. Of both of you. As Jennifer prepared to leave, Daniel called her back. Jennifer, I know I've said this before, but thank you for that wrong number, for trusting a stranger, for letting me be part of this family. Jennifer crossed back to him and took his hands. You're not part of this family, Daniel. You are this family. You always were. We just had to find each other. Outside, the city sparkled with a million lights, each one a story, a life, a connection. And somewhere in that vast tapestry of human existence, Jennifer liked to imagine Amanda Montgomery playing her violin, the notes weaving through the cosmos, binding together the people she loved across impossible distances. A wrong number had become the right connection. A tragedy had transformed into hope, and a family that had been broken and scattered had found itself whole again in the most unexpected way. Tommy's recovery continued to exceed all expectations. 6 months later, he walked across the stage at graduation without assistance, accepting his degree in mechanical engineering to thunderous applause. Jennifer and Daniel sat together in the audience, Margaret between them, all three of them crying proud tears. That evening, as they celebrated at Tommy's favorite restaurant, he raised his glass in a toast. "To Amanda," he said simply, "the sister I never met, but who saved my life, and to wrong numbers that turn out to be exactly right." "To Amanda," they echoed, glasses clinking. Jennifer looked around the table at the faces of her family, blood and chosen, lost and found. Her mother had spent years searching for the daughter she'd given up, never knowing that daughter would one day save her son's life from beyond the grave. The circle had closed in a way Diane never could have imagined, but Jennifer believed somehow, somewhere, her mother knew, and she was at peace. As they left the restaurant that night, Jennifer's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, unknown number. For a moment her heart stopped, remembering another unknown number on another desperate night. She answered. "Hello?" A young woman's voice came through, trembling and scared. "I'm sorry, I think I have the wrong number. I was trying to call my sister, but my mom is in the hospital, and I don't know what to do, and—" Jennifer met Daniel's eyes across the parking lot. He nodded, understanding immediately. "You didn't reach your sister," Jennifer said gently, "but you reached someone who wants to help. Tell me where you are." Because that's what Amanda had taught them all, that love finds a way, that help comes from unexpected places, and that sometimes the wrong number is exactly the call you needed to make. The story that had begun with a misdial in the middle of a storm had become something bigger than any of them. It had become a legacy of hope, of second chances, a family forged not just by blood but by the impossible grace of connection, and it was far from over.